Bros! Ash here, welcome back to Gents. Hope you're well. New Hawas. This time it is Atlantis, yes, named after the sunken city. The one that Cthulhu sleeps in. Oh wait, that's something different. I'm just playing. I know what Atlantis is. But this is one of the new Hawas fragrances, and it's one that actually we've been waiting on for a long time. Just recently popped up at discounters. I bought this one alongside this one, which is the new Viper. I have a video on this as well in case you haven't seen it. But yeah, it's weird. These were announced months ago, but nobody could get their hands on it. Nobody could actually buy this stuff. And fragrances that they had announced after the fact, after these ones, were released before these ones. So yeah, it's kind of like, what exactly is going on? Ho, ho, ho. But who cares, I guess, at the end of the day, because now you can indeed finally get them. I'll have it linked in the description in case you want to check it out. But let us begin, as we always do, by taking a look at the presentation. First off, the box, and I actually really like the look to this one. So it has the name of the fragrance, the flanker name, size and concentration, 100 ml eau de parfum, all there on the front. It has this cool color scheme, so it's kind of like green, lighter blues, darker blues, just a lot of different things going on. It also has this rainbow refractor thing going on. Logo up top, little info on the back. Don't spray this in your eyeballs. And then on the bottom, your batch code and barcode. Mine made October 2025. And then we have the bottle. It has that same kind of color scheme as the box. So it's got a nice gradient to it, darker toward the bottom, kind of a medium blue in the middle, then up at the top, you get this green coloration. It says Rasasi on top of the cap, which does click into place, has the little snake as always, and then you have a sticker on the bottom with your size and concentration once again. And let us do, as we always do, let's share some sprays together, shall we? Here we go. Ooh, strong atomizer. So as I told you guys a little bit earlier, I already did a video on Hawas Viper. You can check that out if you haven't. That one essentially though smells very similar to Black Afgano by Nasamato. This one smells completely different. All right, let's dig into Hawas Atlantis. How does this smell? What does it smell similar to, and how good is it? But before we do that, before we get deep down into it, which we will, oh yes, we will. Ugh. Here are some codes you can use to save money, both on these new Hawas fragrances and also anything else your heart desires. I have codes for JOMASHOP, Lucky Scent, Fragflex, the perfume box, just basically whatever you want. And you can use these codes to save yourself money on your purchases. All right, cool. How does this one smell? Oh, and one thing really quick. I think Fragrantica has the wrong note breakdown for this one. If you go there, their note breakdown is different than what Rasasi actually has on their own website. So either Rasasi is wrong about their own fragrance or Fragrantica is wrong. So you be the judge. But who cares about that? Hawas Atlantis. This one opens up way greener than I would have ever expected. Because looking at the bottle, I mean, it does have a little green to be fair, but looking at the bottle, the name Atlantis, everything else you're thinking aquatic, fresh, probably sweet. But it opens up far greener and more aromatic than I expected. So it has galbanum and bergamot when you first spray this one on. It's bright, it's citrusy, it's kind of sharp in a way, and it has a light bubblegummy sweetness that works in underneath there, which could remind you a little bit of some of the other Hawas fragrances, you know, the original Hawas Ice, like to a faint extent. Again, just the bubblegummy sweetness aspect. But it also has this almost ozonic semi-aldehydic lift to it when you first spray it on. So it keeps everything very crisp and airy, but then it's also mixing together with all of those green aspects at the same time. And it starts to take on this kind of mossy, sea salty, semi-aquatic feel at the same time. So the first few seconds when you first spray it on your skin, you might be like, oh yeah, okay, little Invictus with a twist, maybe Invictus Legend with a twist. It's closer to that than the original Invictus. And that's the first thought that's gonna hit your brain. You're gonna be like, okay, that makes sense, I guess, because, you know, the original Hawas, similar to Invictus, Hawas Ice, same deal. But that sensation, that Invictus Legend sensation, it fades the longer this stays on your skin. That familiar, sweet, fresh scent profile that Invictus Legend has, that starts to give way more and more and more, and it turns greener and mossier and a little bit earthier and woodsier. And once this hits the mid, it pretty much fully drops that Invictus vibe. Like that stuff is just, no thank you, goodbye. It gets at times like almost overtly green. I'm talking like a little bit of like an algae vibe, mossy, earthy, and quite woody at the same time. And then it becomes a little bit like Louis Vuitton's Lovers, which is this guy right here. Now it's not the exact same as this one, but the way that galbanum hits here in the Hawas is very similar to how it hits here in the LV. So it's got this salty minerality, this bit of earthiness in Hawas Atlantis that comes across similar to how it's used here. But it's almost like it's drawing from shoreline vegetation rather than giving you something like deep ocean. And those herbal facets that it has, they can come across pretty heavy, and it can give your nose almost like a tingle, like a tinge in your nose hairs when you smell it, especially up close. Every now and then you get this brief sweetness that will kind of poke its head through and act like it's trying to start balancing things out, and then gone again. So in the opening in the mid, you end up almost like whiplash confused to an extent, because you spray it on and it's like, okay, Invictus Legend with more of that green lean to it. And then all of a sudden, all of that sweetness drops out. And then you've got this kind of, like I said, shoreline vegetation vibe style, Louis Vuitton Lovers kind of thing going on. And then as it dries down further, the Invictus kind of feeling starts to creep back in again. That kind of almost green overload that you get in the mid here, it does smooth out a bit once you hit that dry down. And that sweetness that's been kind of trying to pop in through the mid, it finally kind of comes out and you can start to smell it a little bit more. That's when it starts to get more of that Invictus vibe coming back in, which would tie it in with the original Hawas and Hawas Ice. So that kind of aspect is like there in the opening for a little bit, then gone. And I mean pretty much completely gone off my skin through the mid. And then in the dry down, back again. It's like the Hobbit. There and back again. And that aspect lays over this creamy woodiness, this light creamy woodiness in here, sandalwood. It's smoother, a little bit more familiar once you hit that far dry down, but it still does carry over some of those green aspects from the mid and the opening into the dry down. And now when I say green and aquatic, I don't want you thinking about stuff like Paradise Garden, you know, Le Beau Paradise Garden. It is not like that at all. And I bring that one up because that's probably right now the most well-known fragrance that has green aquatic notes. Actually, it might be the only really big fragrance that has that. So I know that when I say green plus aquatic, you might think, okay, well, kind of like that one, like that kind of sweetness. No, that one infinitely more wearable than this one. This one also has some lightly sugared aquatic facets in the dry down as well. And while it does get more of that Invictus Aqua / Hawas Ice kind of feeling coming out in the dry down, this does still come across darker than Hawas or Hawas Ice or the other Invictus as well. It has a little more density to it, a little more like of a heaviness to it. And that's gonna be also partially because the way that minerality, kind of mossiness, woodiness, slight earthiness that it has that carries over into the dry down, it makes it just feel darker, just a little heavier. Now in terms of performance, Hawas Atlantis is pretty good, like you would expect from most Rasasi Hawas fragrances. It projects really well, so it's going to help fill up a room if that's what you're after. It lasts a long time too, especially for a fragrance that is named Atlantis. So you're thinking it's going to be more of this kind of aquatic summertime type of scent, but it's actually a lot stronger than you might expect if that's your mindset going in. Now, I spoke about Rasasi Hawas Viper to me in that review being a little bit of an odd choice, in that what most people are looking for when it comes to Hawas, I think, is probably not a Black Afghano clone. And there's more to it than just that, but that's for that video. But I have similar thoughts here with Hawas Atlantis. Now, the idea of taking something that is Invictus-ish, whether that's the original or Invictus Aqua or Invictus Legend, which this one is most close to in the opening. But there's the idea of taking that DNA and mixing it with something else, and that can work, like we've seen with Nitro Red by Dumont Paris. They mix that one with a little touch of BR540, give it its own little touch, like a kind of its own DNA styling to an extent, but it's clearly based off Invictus. With this one, they were like, let's do a Louis Vuitton mix, but I don't want to do one of the Louis Vuittons everybody's done. So it's like they went, You know, we can't do Imagination. We can't do that. We can't do Pacific Chill. We can't do Afternoon Swim. What about this one? And so they put these together, or this with the Hawas type DNA, Invictus type DNA. And to me, it just doesn't work. Now, of course, there are gonna be some people out there that think, yes, this is fantastic. What a great change. It's very interesting. It's this and that. But to me, like I said before, it gives you almost like olfactive whiplash where you smell it and you're like, oh my God, it's so green. It's so like different, aromatic, kind of trying to mix with this sweetness and this freshness. And then the bottom just falls out and all of that sweetness goes away. And then it goes, you know, this other direction where it ends up smelling, you know, minerality and vegetation and sea saltiness and all of this other stuff. And it just doesn't vibe all that well. And then it changes again and starts to come out with that sweetness again, but now it's mixed with remnants of that mid. So it's trying to take like these pieces of a puzzle that are circles or whatever and trying to ram them through triangle shapes. You know, it's not working. And I would say that it's just me in terms of how it comes across. You know, I'm not really a big fan, but I also got some negative reactions from people when I was testing this out who weren't really big fans. And it does go back to Hawas as a line, like what is the plan? Because right now the plan just seems to be, I don't know, release 15 of them and at least 10 of them might be good. This one to me is not. It's like right at the bottom of the Hawas lineup. I don't like it. I think the mid doesn't smell nice. I think the opening is like bracingly green to the point where you go, ooh, that's like unbalanced, you know, it's like almost overloaded. And I love green fragrances, I do, but I feel like it's just the trying to combine these together and it just didn't really work. To me, it's almost like a galbanum overload and then trying to hit it with that minerality, that sea saltiness to keep it somewhat aquatic when it's really not, and it ends up coming across woodsy and mossy and everything else. It just feels like, you know, the one DNA is pulling this way and the other is pulling this way instead of cohesively working. And I just think for the majority of people, they're gonna smell this and be like, oh, this stuff sucks. This is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for performance, looking for versatility, looking for compliments. That's what most people are, and a cheap price. When it comes to Hawas, I think that's what most people are going for. And you can accomplish that with a lot of different scent profiles. You know what I mean? You can have stuff come out that is warm and rich and sexy and decadent. You can have stuff that comes out that's super fresh and clean and bracing, but the fragrance itself has to be cohesive. And like this one to me just feels like really kind of messy. Now I know some people are gonna absolutely adore this one, absolutely love this one, and more power to you. I'm not saying that you're wrong, because you're not. Everybody has their own opinion, their own tastes, absolutely. But to my own taste, this stuff is not it. And I think for the majority of people, what they're looking for, and Hawas, this is not it. In terms of seasonality, I forgot that, like it matters. More spring, fall for me. Middle of summer, I wouldn't go for this. A little bit too much. Middle of summer when it's real warm. Spring, fall, day or evening. So that is Hawas Atlantis, all this time to finally get it, and it is something. It is one of the fragrances of all time. It is one of them. It does exist. I want to thank you guys for hanging with me here until the end. That is this one. Again, it's linked in the description in case you're interested. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves. See you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys.